Declaring the situation at the border a national emergency to fund the border wall and predicting the legal fight ahead. With all the fighting in Washington, not many people realize just how dangerous the situation is for the border agents on the ground. Tomi Lahren got a first-hand look for Fox Nation.
This area right now, this is our border protected by this barbed wire fencing and, wood. Would this area be suitable for fencing if you could afford fencing to put here?
The way the terrain's set up, it's viable to construct border fencing in this area.
We had learned over the years that when we put a solid barrier we couldn't see through, our adversaries, whether it be drug smugglers, illegal aliens, or smugglers, would hide behind them and then use it to basically assault our agents, throw rocks at our agents, or just hide like lots and lots of people and then all at one time run across.
Would this then line your border? One of these prototypes would then line your border?
That design right there is basically what we're looking at going forward.
This is inhospitable terrain, not only for them, but also for us. It's difficult for us to deploy technology into these areas. So we have to make up for that by either using aircraft or just having agents on the ground hiking in. And that's where the real work of the Border Patrol comes into play.
The agents have to get up here either by us or by foot. We had a 100-foot long fast rope, which is a rope about the diameter of a fireman's pole that you can slide down.
We're roughly 8 miles north of the border, and we encounter camouflage groups. They wear like a real tree or a mossy oak type camo from head to toe.
It's fine for us to arrest people that have crossed the border illegally, but the true targets and the true people that we want to hit hard every single day are the facilitators. It's the scouts on the mountaintops. It's the guys that are foot guides for the groups that are bringing them across. It's the load drivers and all of the criminals that are facilitating this illegal trafficking of people. There's absolutely no value on human life when it comes to the cartel that's operating south of the border. The people that are crossing have no say in when they're crossing, where they're crossing, or how they're crossing. They're being crossed in the hands of criminals, and it's a dangerous situation.
Tomi Lahren joins me now. So, Tomi, when you were shooting the inhospitable terrain and those men were kind of just climbing down off of a helicopter and pursuing illegal crossings on foot, where exactly was that?
That was in the Nogales, Tucson area in Arizona, and it was about 115 degrees when we were there. So what these guys are doing day in and day out, they're hiking into the middle of their desert, they're hiking back. Some areas, it's so remote that they can't even take ATVs. So these people are the real heroes of this country, and they don't get nearly enough credit. So some of that inhospitable terrain, it was almost like huge mountaintops and cliffs. You couldn't put border fencing there. That's where you'd have to just surge a lot of Border Patrol agents, correct? Yeah, and so that's what I asked them about, because obviously that area is not really suitable for a lot of fencing or a wall. But if we have wall in other places where we can put a wall, then our agents can focus on those remote areas.
Exactly.
So when I went there, I asked them time and time again, does a wall work? And they said, we need a wall because then we can focus on these areas and we don't have to be sitting there worrying about people running across, and we can divert our efforts. It really makes sense, but the Democrats can't seem to get it.
Yeah, they don't want to listen to the experts. They think they know better than the people on the ground. When you, in the beginning of the package, could you see where you kind of highlighted that pathetic little fence? It was about as tall, about 5 feet tall here, with some little barbed wire. Where exactly was that?
That was in Arizona as
also
well, in the
in
Nogales
Arizona?
area. And yes. Yeah, and it was that bad. I mean, that was not just a small little area. There was a lot of area that either had no fencing at all or had that. I mean, I think you and I have talked about this before, but I grew up in South Dakota, and we have better fencing to keep livestock in than we do protecting our border, which is really pathetic.
Well, the Democrats don't want meat around. They want to get rid of your hamburger, like Cory Booker. So that fencing could come in handy later. What a lot of people don't understand, Tomi, is they say, oh, the drugs, all the narcotics, they come through ports of entry. But you know what? Who do you think deals the drugs? You have to have men. And the guys that are dealing it in the United States, they cross the border illegally on foot between the ports of entry. Listen, great job down there on the border. That was great footage. And you guys can check that out with Tomi on Fox Nation. See you later.
And a number of Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate say that they object to the president's plan as well, some calling it an overreach of executive power. Joining me right now in an exclusive interview is Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me back, Maria.
Is this a national emergency? Your reaction to what's happening with the president saying that it's a national emergency, but some of your colleagues are pushing back.
Well, first of all, does the president have the authority? And the answer is yes. Since 1976, when the law passed, presidents have declared more than 60 emergencies. But also look to this. When the federal government does an act, governors have the responsibility that they can declare an emergency. And in 2005 in Arizona, Janet Napolitano, who then became DHS Secretary for Obama, declared an emergency because of what was happening on the border. So did New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. And Bill Richardson cited the lack of movement by the federal government. So the president, one, has the authority. Yes, it is a crisis and emergency along our border. First of all, think about the human trafficking that is happening.
Yeah.
Think about the children that are being moved across these countries. But think about the amount of drugs and how many thousands of Americans are dying, and most of that is coming through the southern border. So the president, one, has the authority. Yes, it is an emergency that has been shown before. And I believe at the end of the day, this wall is going to be built, not sea to shining sea, but about 200 miles.
Well,
he's got the appropriations that which just passed.
Yeah.
He's got 55 miles there. Then he has other abilities to pool money, such as from the Treasury, the forfeiture. This is from illicit crimes that people have done. So he's got about $600 million there. He's got $2.5 billion from inside Department of Defense to be used for counter narcotics to fight drugs as well. This is where that should be used. And then he's looking at MILCONs, the military construction items.
So this is about $3 billion roughly that he can use other monies from other areas. But the overall bill was a lot lower, as you know, than what the president wanted. He wanted $5.7 billion, but you still voted yes for it.
Yes, I did, because you know what? It was a down payment moving forward. Remember this, just about a month ago, what was Nancy Pelosi saying? Only $1 for the wall, that they would eliminate beds, which would mean criminals would be left out into our society, and they would abolish ICE. ICE has just received more money than they ever had in the past. We have the ability to keep the number of beds we had before, and they just voted for $1.375 billion, 55 miles of new wall. So if I'm weighing that compared to a continuing resolution, which would not get any, of course, this is moving it in the right direction. Is it as far as I want it to go? No. But the combination of this bill and the action what the president is doing, we're getting to the end result that we need to protect the southern end of our border.
Here to discuss, former Utah Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, editor and publisher of American Greatness, Chris Buskirk, and former Bernie Sanders national staffer and founder of the Teslin-Figaro communications group, Teslin-Figaro. All right, Jason, let me start with you, because you, of all people around the table, really understand the kind of intricacies of this whole process around funding for the border wall, the national emergency. There's so much to say, but just give us your take on where we are right now.
I'm glad the president is finally standing up to do something about the border and illegal immigration. In my lifetime, I haven't seen anybody who's as laser focused on that. The problem is, as you say, the establishment Republicans don't really want to solve this. They have not served the president well. They did not put a good bill in front of the president. I understand why he signed it. I think there was a better, smarter way to do it. But nevertheless, the president needs backup and support to truly solve the illegal immigration problem.
But Chris, a lot of conservatives have pushed back and said, well, look, they actually quite like the emergency declaration, at least it shows he's fighting, but he shouldn't have signed that bill because actually it prevents him, you know, the small print, the fine print says it prevents him from doing the things that they want to see happen.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's actually, the more people read this bill, the worse it gets. And I mean, this is a classic example of one of these bills where you have to read the bill, or you have to pass the bill to find out what's in the bill. You know, there's one thing that people don't realize, and that nobody in the West Wing seemed to tell the president, which is that Section 224 of this bill provides for what is basically a de facto amnesty for anybody who will currently or potentially could house an unaccompanied minor, which would be everybody, because there's no criteria for it. So you just say, yeah, okay, fine, I could do that. And then not that person and nobody who lives in the household. That's in the language of the bill. And so what President Trump did is he promised a wall. He actually signed a massive amnesty.
Do you agree with that?
In large part, I really do. The president would have been better served to actually take the continuing resolution from last year and in a page and a half, just go ahead and say, all right, let's do what we did last time and then transfer funds and build the wall. He would have had tens of billions of dollars more to do it. Right. Instead, you have 1,600 pages that put limitations on the president that nobody fully understood because nobody could possibly have read it. But it was chock full of limitations to slow the president down.
I'll get to you in a second, Tesla. I want to get Jason on the specifics because, you know, you've been there. One argument I've heard is that while it may be true what Chris says, and you seem to agree in terms of the restrictions, this is just up till September, and that all of that lapses in September, so it's not the end of the world.
They'll have to have additional clarifying language because there will be a food fight, and more than a food fight, a legal fight, as to whether or not that continues on in perpetuity. Now, we've heard Steve Scalise say, oh, no, this only happens for a short amount of time, but it shouldn't happen for any amount of time. And so I recognize that the president got just over $1 billion to build the wall, but he could have gotten tens of billions of dollars by having the flexibility that Barack Obama and other presidents have had by transferring money between accounts without any additional appropriations.
Tesla, when you look at all this and the way that this fight over the wall is just dominating politics, you know, the Democrats came in saying, you know, we're going to be all about health care and all this and tackling corruption. And, okay, we may have a big sort of laugh about that, given how they're funded. But anyway, that was the message. We're going to do all these positive things. Instead, it's just all about this one issue that President Trump chose to put there. Do you think that in some senses, the Democrats have walked into a political trap?
Yeah, well, you know, they made it all about DACA. You know, last year it was all about DACA, 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 which is why a lot of Democrats like myself moved to the Independent Party, because you're not focusing on, you know, actual citizens in this country and what's going on the other side of the wall. And so that's where the frustration is. And I think that's where the right and the left can agree. You know, we disagree or have polar opposite opinions as we see, you know, we have these conversations. But I think people overall, they want someone to deliver on their campaign promises. I did not vote for President Trump. I was not a President Trump supporter, but I completely understand that if he promised people the wall, then people kind of want to expect to see the wall. The same way with Barack Obama. I expected things from Barack Obama, and his Congress at that time did not support him as well. So my thing that I'm having is, my problem is, I guess people are either unfamiliar because now they're paying attention. Every president has asserted some type of executive order. This is nothing new. This is nothing new under the sun, but because President Trump is doing it and because it is such a hot, controversial issue, that's why now it's such a big deal to have a president. I think you put
it very well about people's expectations. Last word, Jason, just looking forward. I mean, where can we be optimistic? It seems to me that in the sort of list of pots of money that the president and his team are pointing to, there is some money there, the drug enforcement and the Treasury receipts or whatever it is, that actually he could spend right now and start making some progress.
The president will make progress, but there were limitations in this bill on the number of ICE officers they could hire, limitations on the number of Border Patrol agents that they could hire. I believe the president promised.
So what's the answer then? What should he be thinking about positively?
The president has to propose a budget in February, and the Congress is supposed to pass a budget over the summer so that is in place starting at the end of September. That is the hope. But again, divided government, it's going to be very difficult to get there. But the president is on the right side of the issue, and he will continue to pound on it. And America, I think, is on his side. I really do.
Yeah, and let's just come back to, I want to leave you with the point that I made at the beginning, which is in the end, he can't do it on his own. You've got to have more populist allies if that's what you want to see, if that's the change you want to see. Okay.